Hi, everybody. So last time we talked, we were talking about guarding our heart. We were talking about seeking God's counsel on figuring out what things in our life are the right things for this season and what things need to go. What things do we need to say yes to, and what things, might still be good opportunities, good things, but they might not be the God things, right, for this season that we're in right now. And kind of as an extension of that, I was thinking also more, again, in my own life too, about motives, about what motivates me to do the things I do. So motives are kind of like the why behind the what. So once we're figuring out, God, what are the things that you have for me in this season? Not only that, but we want to examine, our heart and think about why are we doing them? How is our attitude, our perspective, all of those things? What's the reason behind it? Because again, when we say yes to everything and not the right things, then we know that we're going to produce dried up, bitter fruit, bitter attitudes. The stuff that's in our heart is going to come out. So we want to make sure that we're choosing the right things and having the right attitude for those right things. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 10 through 15, it talks about the foundation in our life, and then building upon that foundation, the work that we do, the things that we do, and how when Jesus returns, that those things are going to be, we're going to stand before God, all of us, and give an account for the things that we do, and the things are going to be tested by fire, and we're going to see what really remains, what was true, a work of God, the things, our attitudes, all of those things. Or is it going to all be burned up because it was all junk? It was all the wrong things in the wrong season and all the wrong attitude, all of that. And that's, I think, something that maybe we don't want to think about, but we need to. It's what I would call something that can be sobering. It's a sobering thought because it brings us back to focus, and it keeps our eyes on the right things and helps us to remember that, yes, what we do matters and why we do it matters. Even for the simplest things, your motives for thinking about right now, if you're in a season where your kids are little and, like you're doing a lot of serving, what attitude do you have for that serving? Do you have a bitter attitude? Do you have I'm tired of doing everything, serving your husband and you're taking care and in your home and everything? Do you have a nasty attitude about that? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? And I have something written on my refrigerator that says about, are my acts of service, how is my attitude for those acts of service? Am I completing them with bitterness and resentment, or am I remembering that these are the things that God has called me to in this season, and these things matter, and my motives for doing them matter, my attitude matters. So think about the why for what we do, because again, we're going to stand before God and we're going to give an account. So it's almost like we need to have, and no one can tell you, what you need to do in this season and what's the why behind it, except that's between you and God. So it's kind of like we need to have a meeting with ourselves, right? With ourselves and Holy Spirit. We need to make a list maybe of the things that we're doing in our lives, the things that we think God has picked for the season, or if you're still on, step one, just all the things that you're doing, and you need to think about, why am I doing these things? What's the why behind them? Are these the right God things for this season? And what is my attitude regarding these things? Because again, even, God can call us to certain things, and we can think they're to look a certain way or they're to be a certain way. And we have, unrealistic expectations, and then our attitude changes and we're not completing those things in that season with the proper attitude, the proper perspective. We're not being faithful in the little, and then we can't, move on to what he would have for us in the next season. Say, for instance, like even dealing with people. Maybe God's called you to do something, to start a group, or, something in your job where you're dealing with people. And dealing with people is always always, tricky. It's lots of opportunities, right, to walk in love. So maybe you don't want to deal with those people. You're complaining and you're always griping about, these people and their attitudes and blah, blah. Instead of approaching this as this is what God has called me to, he's given me the grace for this. And my why needs to be that he's called me to this, and I need to approach this with the right perspective, with the right attitude, because none of us want to get to the end of our life. We're going to stand before the Lord and he's going to say, what did you do? Were you led by me? Did you follow the right things for the right season? And did you do them with the right motives, the right attitudes behind it? Meaning, God has called me to this. I'm going to approach this with that attitude. I'm going to be a servant. I'm going to know that he's going to give me the grace to complete this task for this season and all of those things. So think about the why behind what you're doing, not just what are you doing.